Hello, Garland Nixon here, and there's all kinds of tomfoolery afoot in the U.S. empire, and Laith Marouf is just the guy to straighten us out and help us understand it. Let's talk. Good morning, Garland Nixon. Oh, maybe I didn't move my camera. I'm all the way over on the side here. Oh, all right, there we go. I'm hanging out with Laith Marouf. We got lots of important stuff to talk about here. Before we get started, follow me on Rumble and Rockfin and all that stuff. And guess what? Now I got my P.O. Box. It's right there, P.O. Box 32, Glen Burnie, Maryland. If you want to send a letter, a book, a kind word, a donation, it doesn't matter. There are people that don't want to use the internet and they're concerned about, the CIA being all over them. So guess what? You can do all of the normal stuff, but we got a P.O. box and I got a bunch of letters. I haven't got a chance to read them. I'm excited about that. And here's the important thing here. We're going to get to all the stuff. We're going to get the weekend coverage from Laith Marouf. But guess what? FreePalestine.tv. That's Laith's site. It's very important. Let me give you the full screen. You got to see all of this.
The video, but yes.
Excuse me. FreePalestine.video. That's the website. Look at that, man. They go to the site. I was watching Laith's accounts the other day, and there was like all of these huge bombings, and Laith was like, we're rushing to the site. We got to cover it. We got to get video. And I'm like, man, those guys are brave. So here's what you need to do. And if there's bombings and stuff, they like go there and they get the video and the coverage and talk to people. It's incredible. FreePalestine.video, my bad. .video, FPTV. Latest episodes, field reports, military operations. You notice that? You can see the military operations. That's a place to go with good video. And this is important. There's a little thing right there that says donate to Free Palestine TV. So it's freepalestine.video. And you notice there, you can help fund their community television station one time or monthly. It's great if you can do it monthly because that gives them what's called in business RMR, recurring monthly revenue, and that helps them pay the bills and pay people and give us this great content. FreePalestine.tv. That is where you need to go for all of the information you could possibly dream of. When it comes to, I keep saying .tv? FreePalestine.video. Video. Okay.
I wish I could buy that .tv one.
Yeah. Yes.
Somebody is holding it and they're asking for $6,000 for it, but I don't have that money.
Well, if they're doing that, whoever it is, they're not down for the cause. If they're holding it, trying to get $6,000, they certainly are not thinking about the Palestinians. They're thinking about their filling their own pockets. At any rate, who knows? Maybe if you guys, there may be somebody around that'll donate $6,000. So I don't know, but if you can donate, maybe we can help them get that. Anyway, let's get rolling. A number of things going on, and I got to start with this because this is some things just make you get on you, just make you aggravate you. There's this conversation going on. Trump doesn't like Netanyahu. He's not getting along. He's arguing with Netanyahu. Call me cynical and skeptical. I just see it as a play, an imperial puppet show. Sure, yeah, right. He's going to give him everything he wants. Has he stopped giving him money? Has he stopped giving him weapons? Has he stopped supporting him? You know what I mean? If I don't like you, there has to be some material evidence of it in the real world. But he doesn't like him, but he's still going to give him everything he wants, protect him, support him. I ain't buying it, Laith. Your thoughts on this business about Trump and Netanyahu not getting along?
Well, obviously it's for public consumption because, remember Trump got elected on the America First or Make America Great Again. So he can't appear like that his priority is to make Israel great again. There's a limit to how much the white supremacist base or would accept as they see their president being dragged by the neck for a tie, by Netanyahu. So he has to appeal to that base, make sure that they believe still that he is in charge, And that's one side. The other side is, as we see, Trump is trying to negotiate the United States position in all of Western Asia, whether it's through his negotiations with Yemen and or Iran, and the Gulf monarchs that hold all the oil and gas that the United States needs. So he cannot appear even to these local parties that he's negotiating with to be in the pocket of Netanyahu. So, as we saw with the ceasefire with Yemen, the whole idea is to make it look like the United States is not anymore fighting the war on behalf of the Israelis in Yemen. And although, as we see, there's continuation of bombardment of Yemen by the Israelis. Okay, and so similarly, now that Netanyahu is going to go to, Trump is going to go to Riyadh, Doha, and Abu Dhabi in the next few days, he has to enter looking like whatever those Gulf monarchs give him as gifts will actually pay off. If he sees like he's all in Netanyahu's pocket, why even give him gifts? Because the Saudis are not going to get anything. If in reality, as we saw when they gave him the $400 billion last time, they didn't get nothing in return. That in terms of favor on top of the Zionists or having more say than even Turkey in what's happening in the region. So this is all for public consumption in the U.S. on one hand, and the other is throwing dust in people's eyes. Whatever leadership in the region here is negotiating.
I will only challenge you with one thing, and that is this: the MAGA people consider white people to be second-class citizens at minimum. They're not white. The MAGA people, the Trump people, look at this. Now, if you or I said this, we'd be thrown off of everything. I'd probably be in a prison in El Salvador because I don't feel this way. I don't even look at the world like that, like this group is better or that group is worse. There's people who do good things. There's people who do evil things, and there's groups that do evil things. Okay, here's Mr. MAGA. The masters of the universe are Jews, former U.S. senator declares in Israel. So apparently, Trump ain't a white supremacist. Trump... Isn't it interesting that a group of people, can you imagine? I'm a black person and they said, what do you think of black people? Well, Albanians are really the most wonderful masters of the universe. We're just second-class citizens. We've got to do everything for the Albanians, put ourselves in second place. And people would be like, but you're a black guy. Couldn't you at least think about black folks? No, I'm sorry. We must sacrifice everything we have for those darn Albanians because they're the masters of the universe. What the hell kind of group of any kind simply says it's not even about us anymore. We must sacrifice everything for this group. So officially, you're right. It's make Israel great again. And it's Jewish supremacists. The MAGA people apparently have decided that their ethnic tribe must be subservient to their masters. Never seen any damn thing like that in my, and I'm not, let me add this. I'm not into all that one group is better than other groups. You know what I mean? I don't even buy into that. We're all human beings and we're all beloved brothers and sisters, and that's wonderful. But apparently MAGA has now become, hey, we're second-class citizens, Israel first, Jewish people first. Well, Zionists, they hate Jewish people that aren't Zionists, but whatever, you get my picture. What the hell is that?
Yeah, it's something that we've never seen in human history, that a whole culture debases itself and says that it's less than somebody else. And clearly the MAGA base is not these MAGA politicians. The MAGA politicians are all Zionists and are repeating this. And I think there is beginnings we can see of discontent within the MAGA base that views American or European group as better than everybody else, and so now they're having to clash. And this is part of, look at the theatrics that the Western elite plays. They swing one hand, you'll see them, play this MAGA game until they frustrate them, and the MAGA crowd starts being disgruntled, and then they go all the way to the other side, which the they them LGBTQ, right? And then you get them all to elect you, and then you piss them off, and then you go to the next one. This is how it's working, right? And so the MAGA base and this LGBTQ crowd are, being used, both of them, to maintain power for the same elite that hate the working class, that are straight and religious and whatever, and they also hate the working class that is, queer and secular. It doesn't matter. In the end, the regular American is not benefiting from anything that their government is doing, no matter who's in power.
Yep. I would even argue this: they don't even like the Jews. They don't. Zionism is a tool of imperialism. If they liked the Jews, they wouldn't do what they're doing with Israel, because it causes people worldwide to blame Jewish people and dislike. It causes anti-Semitism, but they need anti-Semitism. That's what they feed off. The Zionists use anti-Semitism. That way they can say, see, we've got to do more of what we're doing or whatever. So realistically, there is no one that benefits from the Zionist stuff other than the ruling elite. The LGBTQ trans people, they use them. They use them for human shields. They're always using various groups for human shields. In the end, it doesn't benefit anybody but the ruling elite. This is what it's out. And if you are a member of some group, if you think you're a minority, a Black female, an indigenous person, an LGBTQ, or a Jewish person, and you think they're doing it to benefit you, you're being had, and you're just going to end up suffering in the long run.
The what you reminded me of here is, look, the Zionists have been pushing the West and the West wants it anyways. It's not like they were, twisting the arm of Western capitals to kill Arabs for the last 80 years, So the Zionists need the Arabic peoples, not only the Palestinians, all the Arabic peoples in the region, to be dominated, to loot their resources, to create wars in their countries, to empty them, so the extraction of the resources is easier. At the same time, that leads to huge, migration from these Arabic countries into Western countries, and that means that there's generations growing in the West that are getting integrated and having neighbors and intermarriage and so forth. Therefore, Arabs and Muslims become less and less of a demon in the society. And that's where you see the Zionists then ratcheting up all this anti-immigrant talk, all because they want to, stunt the integration of Arab and Muslim communities in these Western societies. Otherwise, how can they can't bank on racism anymore. So what we see is that the Zionists and the imperialists are destroying Arabic countries, making them unlivable, and at the same time chasing the Arabic and Muslim immigrant communities. And then you look at what's going to happen. These people will not have a land to go back to, and they're not allowed to migrate. And therefore, we see where we're being led to these concentration camps, like the one in El Salvador, that's going to become normalized specifically for these Arabic and Muslim communities. And look, this is going to stretch the fabric of all of the Western societies, where the majority populations that we would call white would start also fighting each other over the future of their country in the ways that we're seeing, and it's fracturing the society as a whole. And so who benefits in the end? I want to say this because it's clear where it's going eventually. The Western societies are going to have to choose: either they cherish cohesion of their society, and or they cherish Israel first. Okay, and that's why, yes, this is in the end going to lead to anti-Jewish sentiments in the streets of the West. And yes, the Zionists would want that also, because they want the Jews to be pushed out to go to Palestine in order so they can fight this war in the situation of the West abandoning them.
I agree. Yeah, I'm 100% right. This is, the fact that it increases anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish sentiment, that Zionism does that, is not as they say, that ain't a bug. That's a feature, right? All right, let's move on. What do we know about? This is what we're hearing: an agreement with Hamas of some guy getting released, and again, that's part of this. Trump went behind Netanyahu's back and made an agreement. I don't buy the whole Trump, the good cop, bad cop game. I never do. But what do we know about that agreement, and what are your thoughts on it? I don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, there's an American colonist who, after he graduated from a Jewish high school in the United States, that programmed him to basically, this is a big problem in Jewish schools. They're all Zionists. There is no anti-Zionist Jewish schools in the United States or Canada. And they put so much emphasis on Zionism and Israel more than even religiosity. And take all these kids on summer trips to the Zionist colony and then encourage them to be IDF soldiers. And this is one of those soldiers who ended up serving on the border of Gaza and was captured on October 7th, 2023 by the Palestinian resistance when they invaded the Israeli bases. So it seems like this is a gift from Hamas to Trump, in hopes that they will get something in return from Trump. And so they're releasing only this one soldier because he's American. He's being released as we're speaking right now. And
maybe food and water or something like that. I've heard rumors that is going to be, they're getting some supply. Whether or not the empire ever keeps their word, good luck with that. But let me just throw this in. But I can understand why they would do something to try to, with the starvation siege being used, why they would do something to try to get food and water. But that's the one thing I heard. I don't know if you heard that also.
Yes, this was supposed to be part of this, is some food and supplies will be delivered. And we already saw 4 medicine trucks from the World Health Organization and the Red Cross being allowed in. Nothing yet other than that we have seen. The famine in Gaza, the man-made famine that is there right now, is very, very serious. Every day we're watching interviews with people that haven't eaten for a week. People are just falling from lack of energy. And of course, the most vulnerable, the sick, the elderly, the young, are most susceptible to death from starvation in such conditions. And according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, the number of children that have died from starvation over the last month has surpassed 70 somewhat children. And these are the whatever they can actually count. We saw a report from the Financial Times, by the way, a few days ago. This is, of course, a Zionist imperialist outlet, the Financial Times. It's not a pro-Palestinian outlet. But according to them, the lowest estimate of Gazans killed directly by the armed conflict, meaning they were hit by a missile or something of the sort, is over 106,000. This is according to the lowest estimate. So you probably add to it everybody that died because of starvation and or negligence of no medical care, all the cancer, all the diabetes, everybody that had any problems. It's illogical to think that there's already anything less than 250,000 Palestinians have died.
I was going to say I can't see less than 500,000. If you remember, a year ago, I forgot what group it was that they were at 186,000. That was last June, I think it was 186,000. So I believe it's closer to 500,000. That's what I believe. If you look at that, and with everything that's happened, I that's my opinion. I mean, and I don't think it's unreasonable to those kind of numbers. And what we're seeing is just one of the most evil actions. What? It's interesting when you look at what the so-called conquistadors did in South America and in the islands, when you look at slavery and the genocide of the Native Americans and all the things that have happened over the course of, I could go to Indonesia and Vietnam and on and on and on, right? The one, to me, lesson that we learned from this, nothing changed. The U.S. empire is just as evil. Imperialism, colonialism. 1 million dead in Ukraine. You can start there. 1 million dead in Ukraine for what? For imperialism. So they were going to use this country like a weapon, sharpen it up like a knife, and throw it at Russia. 1 million dead. They could care less, right? They're every bit as brutal and evil in 2025 as they were in 1525. They've got the weapons, the ruling elite of the West. They've got the weapons of 2025 and the mentality of 1125. Nothing's different with these people.
Yeah, and of course, every imperialist, colonialist power in human history said that they are benevolent, and that they are bringing civilization, and that everybody else is evil and they are doing the good thing. So it's not out of the ordinary, and this is why we always have to resist anyone that wants to paint any group in history as out of history. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
somehow they're special. There's nobody special. We're all human. We're all feeble, and the trajectory of rise and fall of imperialism is studied for centuries. It's not rocket science, and obviously this is not going to get better until the empire collapses.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Update us on Syria. What do we need to do? And that's a sad thing. There is complete and total blackout for what's going on in Syria here. They don't talk. In fact, they're going, this lunatic Western puppet that they say he's the leader of Syria. He is a puppet who is in place to give the appearance that there is a leader of Syria other than the U.S. and Netanyahu. Yeah, there's leaders of Syria. They're in Washington, D.C. and Tel Aviv. But this clown has gone. They're shaking his hands and hugging him in the European Union, and all. It just shows that, he's every bit as well, I'll put it like this: he's no worse or no better than Netanyahu. They're the same guy. They got the same master. Anyway, Syria, what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, Al-Jolani was in Paris, and obviously we saw the meeting between Starmer and Macron with the Coke bag on the table there, right? So maybe Al-Jolani brought some Keptagon with him, because that's the drug of choice of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So, everybody's having fun in Versailles. Just to be very blunt about how much this man is a Mossad agent, just yesterday, the Zionists claimed that they did a special operation in Syria to find and extract the body of an Israeli soldier that was killed in 1982 during the invasion of Lebanon and the Battle of Sultan Yaqub between the Syrian military and the Israeli military on the highway that connects between Damascus and Beirut. That was one of the largest tank battles post-World War II ever. and where the Israelis were crushed, and the advancement of the Israelis to occupy the rest of Lebanon was ended, and that's why the Israelis couldn't control Lebanon in 1982. And so, of course, there was no special operation by the Israelis to retrieve the body of this Israeli soldier. The Al-Jolani had arrested, kidnapped, and disappeared the head of the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, in Damascus last week. Because the PFLP fought this battle in Sultan Yaqub with the Syrian military on the Syrian military side, and had captured and killed this Israeli soldier, and they were hiding his body in Damascus. So Al-Jolani kidnapped the head of the PFLP last week. They held him for 5 days, and then they released him. And then we have now the body basically being handed over to the Israelis with nothing in return. The Syrian government and the PFLP held on to the body of this Israeli soldier, and to get in return the remains of Syrian and Palestinian warriors and soldiers that were killed over the years and are still being held by the Israelis. And so, this is also not the first time we see direct collaboration between Al-Jolani and the Israelis. It goes back all the way to the medical aid the Israelis gave to ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria during the war on Syria. That's one big story in Syria. The other is we know now that there's thousands of Syrian girls and women that have been kidnapped and are being sold in markets. There was a big story of a Syrian girl that her parents basically found where she is, and videos were released by Al-Jolani peoples, basically saying that she married willingly to somebody and she's underage. Clearly not true. This, after seeing all the talk about women's rights and freedoms for decades, and all we saw in Iraq and Libya, and now nobody cares about what's happening to Syrian women. Similarly, in universities, a lot of the Christian, Druze, Shia, Alawi students are leaving in mass because Wahhabi death squads are walking around on the campuses and threatening people from these sects. So the situation is really bad, and economically nothing has changed. And so, you wonder how long this is going to last this way.
Yeah, it is unbelievable to look at this. And, here's my thoughts on Jolani. One of these days when his usefulness is no longer, necessary, he's going to get it. You know what I mean? I mean, he doesn't even realize, which, I ain't complaining. You don't think I'll be, I'll be, it'll be a sad day for me, but he doesn't even understand, or maybe he does. I don't know. These puppets think that, somehow they're going to be taken care of. He knows too much. He knows too much. He knows all kinds of stuff. And one of these days, when they decided he's no longer useful, his days will come to an end.
One more thing about Syria that I almost forgot is that the Israelis yesterday in the Golan area that they occupied, the extra parts that they occupied since the fall of the Assad government, they distributed food and aid in one of the villages around Qunaitra, and the locals piled up all the aid and set it on fire. Okay, these are like the Druze of South Syria. They're just to show you how patriotic these Syrians are. The last time they did this a few months ago, again, the Israelis tried to distribute aid to buy the favor of the locals. When the locals set also the aid that time on fire, the next day the Israeli military came and raided the homes and kidnapped the residents. There's right now, that's another thing that it's rarely touched on. Right now, the numbers of Syrians that have been abducted from inside Syria by the Israelis since January is reaching around 10,000. And these are disappeared peoples. There's no trace. And the new Syrian quote unquote government is not asking about them.
No, yeah, it's just obviously this is an Israeli Vichy government. There's something else I wanted to ask you about. Oh, there was something that happened in Lebanon where a bunch of bombs or bunker buster bombs were dropped. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, we went and recorded from this location just outside Nabatea in the south of Lebanon. There's a mountain kind of hilltop outside the Nabatea city. And the Israelis claim that there's a bunker there with missiles and tunnel system. They had already targeted it multiple times during the war. So it's an exposed location. So it's not anymore like a secret place. So clearly Hezbollah will not be using it anymore since it was targeted and exposed and has all surveillance on it. But they decided to drop 30 GBUs all at once in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, where school kids were in schools and families are out shopping and so forth. So it shook the whole town of Nabatea. There was a panic in the city. Parents running to the schools to pick up their kids. There was a lot of shattered windows because of the air pressure. Dropping 30 GBUs at the same time creates an air bubble that travels very fast and far. There was mostly injuries inside the city from falling glass and exploding glass. And there's 2 martyrs and 8 injured. And you can watch this video on our website, freepalestine.video, or on our YouTube or X channel. And it's clear that this was just pure terrorism. It's no need for it, no military value for anything that the Israelis did.
Yes. Well, thank you for updating us on that. Your thoughts on this so-called Iran agreement discussions, right? Where it's, one day, yes, I think we've got a deal with Iran. The next day, Iran's got to get rid of everything and stop doing any and everything. The next day, well, we're maybe closer to a deal. It's getting old. I mean, okay, if they just do this for the next 4 years, whatever, right? I do believe this. I've talked to a lot of military experts. The United States does not have the conventional power to really attack Iran. They don't have it. I think they're bluffing. I think they know that if they attack Iran, they get a bloody nose or worse. And it might not even work because Iran's air defense is really, things are growing. Your thoughts about this whole crap? It's a lot of garbage to me. I don't know what's going to happen. But the so-called Iran talks.
Yeah, I mean, all the players are trying to kind of either formalize their gains and losses over the last year and a half in this war. And clearly both Lebanon and Syria, although it may look like that the United States is in charge of the governments in both of those capitals, the territory is not under control. It's still contested. It's still up in the air. Will the Jolani regime last? How long will it last? Where are the points of flaring up of conflict inside Syria is going to happen? Similarly, here in Lebanon, will they be able to militarize Hezbollah? Or in Yemen, can they stop the supply and the support? So you cannot negotiate. The United States' aim with Iran is not to stop Iran from being a strong country. It is to make Iran accept the existence of the Zionist colony. Okay, Iran. If Iran was accepting of the Zionist colony, it will have a nuclear weapon, and the United States will be fine with Iran having a nuclear weapon. So the negotiations if you come with your strong cards and you're supposed to hold an ace that of we took Syria, right? Let's say the American negotiator is walking into the room and he has supposed to have this ace in hand that is controlling the masses, but he's not really controlling the masses. And same with like, oh, we destroyed Hezbollah. You didn't really help. So the United States can't get anything at this moment if it cannot prove dominance over those three areas that are supposed to be contested: Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. And that's why the US invested so much into bombarding Yemen and trying to subjugate the Yemeni resistance there, in order to have a better negotiating cards on the table when it enters this negotiation with Iran. And it failed. It backfired. And now whatever gains happened in January with the takeover of Damascus and or in November by the killing of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah have waned and don't have much effect on the reality on the ground right now, because every party has moved on to another strategy on the ground for their control.
Yeah, I think you're right. A couple of other things I want to touch on. I get your thoughts on some different things. Well, and again, something, if as you know, it's hard to get anything of what's happening with Turkey. Since the last, once the president of the mayor of Istanbul was arrested, things went dark. Really, as far as information out in the West, I can't find. If I can search Turkey, there's little much of nothing. Your thoughts on, or what, I'm sure it's even hard in Lebanon to get much info. What do you know? Do you know anything about what's going on in Turkey?
The last time you asked me this question, I told you how hard it is to even find anything in Arabic, and I didn't feel like I can answer truthfully. So I went and did a lot of research since our last interview. And the demonstrations continue on a daily basis in Turkey.
Wow.
And we're not hearing anything about them, right? So I went in and I spoke to people on the ground there, and they sent me videos, they sent me photos. And in fact, the former now mayor of Istanbul is on the run, and he's actually communicating with the crowds. There was a huge crowd in Istanbul, in last weekend. Friday. So there's a huge effort to undermine this movement and collaboration, it seems like, with all the media in the West and even in the region here to silence the whole story. But it still goes on, and that shows you, if it still is going on under all this blackout orders and mass suppression, it means that this is a serious movement, because other movements would have fizzled out immediately under these conditions. It's still going on. Therefore, this is serious. And I think Erdogan is not going to be able to find a solution for this challenge of his authority there, because this time there is a kind of coming together of the Kurdish population, the Armenian population, and the Alawi population, as well as the major city dwellers on the coast, not in the heartland. So this is a geographic challenge, especially that Istanbul is so important. The whole city is against Erdogan now. And the danger here for Erdogan is that if he's forced into election, he's definitely going to lose it this time.
I think you're right. So another thing, just various things I want to touch base on. A big story worldwide is IBRAHIM Traore in Burkina Faso. And I've heard people say, he's not just important to Africa, but as a revolutionary leader worldwide, that even the symbolism of standing up against the neocolonialism. I understand there's going to be like Africa continent wide or something at the end of May is going to have a protest or rally in favor of. Your thoughts on this, the Ibrahim Traore thing going on here?
I mean, it was great to see him in Moscow for the Victory Day, which shows you how much respect Russia has for him and how much respect he has for Russia and the Communist Revolution and what that meant to the Third World movement and decolonization in general. And I think what's very impressive about President Traore is that he's trying to create a difference for the new generation rising in his country and now in the Confederacy of the Sahel. And this is very important when you're trying to build a sovereign state, decolonized state, is to get the people to feel the difference between what does it mean to live under colonial rule and under sovereign rule, and they have to have their living standards have to rise. And the fact that Burkina Faso inspired the revolutions that we saw in Mali and Niger, and then pushed for permanency of this new status of independence by creating this confederacy, changing the borders, basically, the space that people can move in and can coexist and coagulate a new identity. This is all very important because it creates challenges for the colonizer who's trying to fracture identities, okay? And you're actually growing your identity, coagulating identities instead of fracturing them. And that's one of the most important revolutionary tactics. And I think this gives me the opportunity to remind everybody again about Ibn Khaldun, the philosopher, the Muslim philosopher, his 3 generations idea that of the rise and fall of dynasties and the rise and fall of empires and states, and understanding, right now Burkina Faso is entering a new stage, a new generation is birthing a new state, and they have 3 generations from this point on to make it stick and succeed. And if we look from this conceptualization about all the decolonization movement that happened in the 1940s and 50s after World War II, we know that that first generation of states that escaped in the 1940s and 50s from colonialism, all of them fell back except 2 nations, and that is North Korea and China. Every other nation that escaped colonialism in the wave of the 1940s, 50s has fallen back, the last of them being Syria. This is very important to look at the experience of how North Korea and China escaped the curse of the 3rd generation. And we understand when looking at China, that meant this 3rd generation that is living right now of Chinese since World War II are living the most advanced life and most highest conditions of living so they have, even this last 3rd generation has nothing to complain about and can see that their life standard has risen over the life standard of their parents. While when we look at what happened in Syria, this 3rd generation of Syria after the revolution had lower living standards than it's the 2nd generation, and that's where it was inevitable that this happened in Syria, because they were not able to break the colonial borders, grow the identity, and what have you. As Burkina Faso right now provides this greatest challenge to the US and imperialism because of the success of breaking the colonial borders, and it's going to now take the West not only to break Burkina Faso internally, but to have to break this bigger identity that is being formed, the Saheli identity.
It's interesting you say that about North Korea. I think Russia understood and realized that they kind of realigned with North Korea, and people were like, boy, what a surprise, little North Korea. But I think you're right. I think the Russians realized that they needed to align with North Korea. They needed to strengthen North Korea, that the colonialists were coming for North Korea, and that in order for them to survive, you can look at it one way, that Russia latched on to North Korea to keep North Korea strong. But I think Russians also realized in order for them to survive, that they needed the strength of North Korea, that it's not like one of them is more important to the other. I think North Korea was very important to Russia's survival, understanding that the entire weight of the Western colonial empire is on their shoulders, that adding North Korea, strengthening North Korea was their way of survival also, that it goes both ways.
Yes, and look, the North Koreans were able to survive this three-generation curse because of, number one, having nuclear weapons. Number two, having their back is both China and Russia immediately. If Syria had the borders with Russia instead of Turkey, it would have survived.
Right.
That's the truth. The other thing is that if you notice, specifically over the last 20 years, the West, artificially exaggerated the cultural output of South Korea, okay, in order to try to infiltrate the mind of the North Korean. Look how much life is better. Look how much fun it is to be South Korean. Look and look and look. And so imagine how much money had to be put in imperial expenditures into fabricating this bubble of South Korean cultural exports, right? But that was a price that's acceptable for the imperialists to try to infiltrate the North Korean mind. And North Korea did the best thing that a state like that can do, which is shut down all media access. Maybe Syria could have survived if it did that. Put yourself in their shoes. People, complain about, censorship and so on. Come on, you have a tsunami of propaganda coming at you, and you're a small country. You definitely can't fight it back. You can't produce a tsunami of media yourself. You might as well just shut down the access to media.
I'll never forget during COVID, I saw a interview with these Amish people in Pennsylvania, the Amish that live on the farms and all that stuff. And one of the a person was asking this Amish farmer, they're saying, you guys have, they, like, in their churches, when they do their ceremonies, they use the same cup, and everybody, they went along with anything. And this woman asked this Amish farmer, she says, why do you feel that you guys have had such luck and so few deaths? He said, because we don't have TVs. And I thought, wow, what a great answer. Let me ask you. Let me throw another thing at you. We've got a few more minutes left. And
I'm gonna carry on.
Go ahead.
About not having TVs. You want to hear a funny story also? In Christianity, there's the Antichrist is going to come at the end of time, right? Before the Christ comes back. In Islam, the Antichrist is called Al-Awar al-Dajjal, which means the one-eyed misinformer. Okay? The one-eyed misinformer. And so he's going to come and, misinform people to, do evil, thinking it's good, you're living in heaven while they're living in hell, and so forth. So if you think about it, in Islam, a lot of these things are not, literal. They're metaphorical. Anything that's in this unseen or in the future is metaphorical. So, the one-eyed misinformer is really the camera and the TV screens and phone screens and so forth that is two-dimensional. It's one-eyed, and
Yeah.
it's always misinforming you. Remember, the first movie was the Birth of a Nation there,
Yes.
right? And it was, the camera was born in the 1880s, and that's the birth dates also of Zionism, and right after it, Nazism and Wahhabism. And so we're already living in the Antichrist time. Okay, if you think about it, really, okay, and and we're just waiting for the return of Christ and the Mahdi and Armageddon to come.
Let me throw something else at you and ask you. I thought about this. I was watching the Victory Day celebrations in Russia, right? And I saw the BRICS people. I saw African leaders. I saw Ibrahim Traore. With, you've got the leader of Russia, the leader of China, the leaders of all these countries, and they've got this guy with them, right? He's right there in the crowd. You see being accepted here. The U.S. is like, he's got to be stopped. He doesn't know what to do with his gold, and we need to get our hands on it. And you see him shaking hands with the most powerful leaders in the world, right? I looked at it and I thought, the U.S. said, we're going to isolate Russia. Putin's evil. We're going to isolate Putin. We're going to do all of this. They focused everything they had, their money, their power, and everything on destroying, isolating everything for Russia. And I see these BRICS countries. I see these global South countries. And I thought, that must really piss them off. Because when they look at that, when they feel like they're all powerful, when we focus on something, we can destroy it. I looked at it and I said, they lost. They lost. It's the game is not the same.
Yes, and now all these countries that are trying to escape American hegemony have a better chance than even the 1940s and 50s, that generation. The the difference in technology is not that huge anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of death that someone can create, no matter how small as a state is now very parable. You can blow up a few buildings anywhere. Anyone can do that now. So there's a change in the whole path of humanity now, and the United States and the Europeans are refusing this change. And this is why there's increase in wars. And look at, by the way, what just happened in the commemorations in Europe of the fall of the Nazis. You had no Russia there. You had the people that were, relatives of Soviet soldiers being harassed in Ukraine and Latvia and Lithuania and so on. Because they were carrying, the pictures of their relatives in these celebrations. We saw, of course, Netanyahu being kind of a guest of honor. The guy that's committing Holocaust right now is the guest of honor of commemorations of the end of World War II in Europe. So the contradictions are getting to be kind of revolting at this point. Before it was like comical, the contradictions, and now they are totally revolting. And most of humanity is cheering for Ibrahim Traore, cheering for Russia, cheering for China, and not because they're like, oh, we like Chinese more than Europeans or something like that, because they see the rise of China, rise of Burkina Faso, rise of Russia as hopes for their own rise. And they hear the language that the Chinese are using or the Russians are using about, cooperative development, about raising nations simultaneously to the same levels of educations and health and so on. And they compare that to how the West speaks down to them. And of course, there's no, it's like the difference between day and night,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, I've talked to, I have a lot of friends that are in Russia, and I talk to people in Russia normally. I, make it to the Russian embassy. I was there for the celebration the May 9th celebration. So I still talk to, not official Russian people, but I talk to people who know people in Russia back and forth. And one of the things that I had a discussion with somebody, this was a couple months ago, and I said, what about Syria? A lot of people are questioning how come Russia didn't do more to help Syria. And what this person, and this is not an official government person, but what they said, look, you got to understand something, Garland. They said the entire Western imperial colonial system is at our door, and we are at war with them. And we understand that we are at war with them, and that we can't fall, that this is existential to us. So would we have liked to do more in other areas in Africa and all of that? They said, yes. They said, but right now, we have to be in total and complete mobilization and preparation. Now, that wasn't an official government person, but because, we don't know where this leads, but and I thought, I understand that. I understand that. I'd like to see do more in Syria, but I understand that when you got the U.S., all of them at your door, firing missiles into you, threatening you, doing terrorist acts in there, it's a matter of existential survival. So based on what the person said, I understood that. I'm the same way here. I'd like to see a lot of people do more in Syria, but there was other issues in Syria. These are complicated times right now, I think. Very, very complicated times. But I do believe that what we're seeing, I'll put it like this. As a person who my spirit is with the global South right now, the rise of the global South, particularly with the finding an end and not just an end to the Palestinian issue. I don't think that's it, but we got to have an end first. But afterwards, the world needs to scream for justice. Whenever this is over, and it needs to be over immediately, the Israeli government shouldn't be able to walk away from this. The world should be saying they must be held accountable. You know what I mean? Effectively, some Nuremberg trials type of thing, where the Nazis aren't like skated out to, hide in the US and Canada, which is probably what they did. But, you get my point. Anyway, I know that was a bit of a rant and a ramble, but your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that Russia's priority is protecting itself. And it was clear, there was the attack on Kursk region. It was getting serious. This was just, a few weeks, months before the fall of Syria. So, on the one hand, we all want to praise the prowess of the Russian military, the amazing scientists in China and Russia that are building all these technologies and so on. But the reality is they are still fighting a global empire that has control of all resources outside their territory. There's nobody that has their resources out of the control of the West. And if they do, they're under sanctions like Iran and Venezuela. So the West still has an unlimited access to resources and looting anybody's bank accounts and printing money to pay for whatever it is. So it is, no matter what we say, just like as we look at the axis of resistance here in the region, and the Palestinian and Lebanese resistance and Yemeni resistance, and we praise them and we're shocked at their amazing accomplishments, we still must understand that the axis of resistance is fighting also this endless empire. It's not a fair fight. And there will be huge losses for the Palestinians, the Lebanese, the Yemenis. Does that mean that they're going to lose the war? I'm not saying that. But yes, Russia has priorities, and that is to defend itself. And after 15 years of strangling Syria and creating a schism of generations, you see, 15 years of war on a country means you have adults that have never seen anything before that. And they can't remember the good that the state of Syria had brought them as independence from French colonialism and the rise and so forth. That doesn't exist in their memory. Therefore, it was logical that Syria was going to collapse if there was no direct intervention to raise the living standards of the Syrians during this war. And Russia and Iran failed in doing so. Okay, look at Israel is their living standard is artificially currently being pumped up to maintain them happy, although there's no factories working in the whole country, right? And so that was
Same with Ukraine. Ukraine,
yeah.
same way. It's artificial. They got no economy whatsoever. The United States literally pays every street sweeper, everything in Iran, in Ukraine.
Yes.
Literally pays the pensions for people in Ukraine. Things that they won't pay for Americans, they pay for in Israel. Israel has healthcare coverage free, college free. The United States pays for that in Israel. We don't have that in the United States.
Yes. So while Iran and Russia are wealthy enough nations, they didn't have the disposable colonial loot to spend on Syria as the United States and the West has the disposable colonial loot to spend on Israel to maintain its society. If they would have tried to raise the living standard in Syria, Iran, and Russia, they would have had to cut it from the plate in front of their own citizens, which they're already doing a lot by sending their armies and militaries. So while I personally have, regrets to what happened in Syria and, kind of a heartburn here for the failures of Russia and Iran, I still understand the logic of where and how we ended up here. And I still understand that Russia and Iran love Syria and the Syrian people and wish them freedom.
And I'd say this, and what our discussion to simply demonstrate something, that this is a world war. This is a world war of the empire. As the empire's decays, it's trying to use every bit of power and authority it has. The world war is in the Sahel. It's afraid, we'll lose, quote, lose Africa. Well, that means you own Africa. It's in, West Asia. It's in Asia, where the U.S. is trying to use tariffs to take out different countries and do different things. That it is, in fact, a world war, and that there is no daylight between what's going on in Ukraine, between what's going on in Syria, between what's going on in Burkina Faso, between what's going on in Venezuela. This is all one thing where the empire is trying to hold on to everything it has. And the one bit of daylight for all the horrors is, I don't think they can, what's the old saying? I don't know the key to success, but I know the key to failure. Try to fight everybody. I don't know the key to winning a war, but I know the key to losing it. When you're at war with everybody, you can't win that one.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately happened to Syria, basically, with all its neighbors ganging up on it, and very few left to be friends with. But yeah, Syria will come back somehow. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it definitely will rise again.
Well, before we go, we must show people this very, very important. Don't forget, everybody. There we go. I don't know if I'm ever going to get this straight. There we go. Share screen. Free Palestine TV. FreePalestine.video, which, of course, that's Free Palestine TV. Moving slow. There we go. Free Palestine .video. That is, things are moving kind of slow here, but they're working. There you go. That's the website, Free FPTV. But remember, to get there, it's FreePalestine.video. That's where you go. That's the work that Laith and his group is doing. You got latest episodes. Look at that, military operations, all kinds of things. Make sure you click on social media links. Follow them on all their social media platforms, and of course, donate to Free Palestine TV. You can click right there. You can donate, and of course, you can make it a one-time. But it would be even much better if you could make it monthly, and that you could give them some recurring revenue so they could, keep this very important operation going. It's dangerous, but life is dangerous, and they're out there. They're real. We're talking about real journalism being done in very, very difficult battle zones and very places that have been recently bombed. They go there. I've seen some of their videos, and the smoke is literally still rising from the bombs and the fires that happened recently that they get on scene. So FreePalestine.video, go there, check out all their stuff, Follow them everywhere. And of course, the important part, if you are able to donate, and here's the thing, there are some people that may not be able to donate. If you can't donate, that's okay. You can share this on all your social media platforms. So everybody share freepalestine.video on all your social media platforms. And what you can then do is put a little note in the post that recommends to other people that they donate and contribute to the cause when they get there. Thank you very much. You follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Rumble, follow me on Telegram. Share this particular video. You can share this on all your social media platforms. And of course, if you want to donate here, fine. I now actually have a P.O. box. So there are people, I've got a whole stack of letters. People wrote me letters. Oh, thank you, Garland. I like what you're doing. Some people wrote stuff like, hey, maybe you could cover this or that. Here's some information. Here's a link. You can send books, whatever, donations, you name it. So the P.O. box is out there now, and follow me on my Substack. Laith, thank you very much. I certainly appreciate all the great work you're doing. And I see you all over YouTube during the course of the week. So keep up the fine work.
Great to be with you, Carl. See you next week.
Same here. And all of this stuff is going on. Everybody contributes however they can. And you contribute with freepalestine.video. Hopefully I contribute by bringing you and other people on. And you guys in the chat, all the people watching this, you contribute by sharing freepalestine.video and by sharing this. Thanks. We're out.